a 9-year-old boy stands before a burning altar in Carthage. His father grips his wrist and makes him swear an oath against Rome. That boy will spend the next 40 years keeping it. He will cross the Alps with elephants. He will drown a Roman army in its own blood at Cannae. And for 15 years, no legion on earth will defeat him. Then one afternoon in North Africa, the impossible happens. Rome could never break Hannibal Barca on the battlefield, so Rome learned to break him somewhere else. The story we tell is usually the elephants, the Alps, the miracle marches. But that is the wrong story. The real story is quieter and far more painful. It is the story of a man who won every battle that mattered and still lost the war. To understand Zama, you have to understand what made Zama necessary. Because Hannibal was not undone by a better general. He was undone by what made him great in the first place. He was born into hatred. Carthage had just lost the First Punic War to Rome. His father, Hannibal Barca, was a brilliant commander handed a humiliating peace. The Barca family did not forgive. They rebuilt, in Spain, far from Roman eyes. Young Hannibal grew up in army camps, not palaces. His classroom was a war tent. He learned Greek, tactics, and survival. He learned that Rome was not a rival. Rome was a womb. When his father drowned in a Spanish river, the oath did not die with him. It passed to a brother-in-law, then to Hannibal himself. He was 26 years old. By 28, he commanded every Carthaginian soldier in Spain. He looked across the Mediterranean and saw a republic that believed it was untouchable. He decided to touch it. In 219 BC, he attacked the Spanish city of Saguntum, an ally of Rome. Rome demanded he be handed over. Carthage refused. The Second Punic War had begun. Rome expected the war to be fought in Spain, or maybe at sea. Rome was wrong about almost everything that came next. Hannibal did not wait to be invaded. He invaded first. He gathered nearly 100,000 men, war elephants and Iberian cavalry, and marched north. He crossed the Pyrenees. He crossed the Rhone, floating elephants across the river on rafts. And then he turned toward the mountains no army was supposed to cross. The Alps in autumn were a graveyard waiting to happen. Snow, ice, hostile tribes raining boulders from cliffs above his column. Men froze on the trail. Pack animals slipped into ravines and disappeared. By the time he descended into northern Italy, half his army was gone. He had perhaps 26,000 men left and a handful of elephants. It should have been the end of his campaign before it began. Instead, it was the beginning of the worst nightmare Rome had ever known. At the Trebia River, in freezing December water, he lured a Roman army into a trap. His brother Mago was waiting in ambush. Rome lost the battle and most of the army. The next spring, at Lake Trasimene, he hid his troops in the mist along the lakeshore. A Roman army of 25,000 marched straight into him. Few escaped. A Roman consul died on the field. Rome had never lost like this. Then came the day his name became a curse in Latin households. Near a small town in southern Italy called Cannae, on a hot August day in 2016 BC, Rome sent its largest army ever into the field, around 80,000 men. Hannibal had less than half that number. He stretched his weakest troops into a thin curve at the center. The Romans pushed forward. The center bent back, slowly, like a bow being drawn. And then his cavalry swept around the flanks and closed behind them. 80,000 Romans were surrounded in an open field. What happened next is still studied in every military academy on earth. By sundown, tens of thousands of Roman soldiers lay dead in the dust. Senators, knights, an entire generation of Roman leadership, gone in an afternoon. In Rome, women wailed in the streets. The Senate forbade public mourning to prevent panic. Hannibal had just delivered the worst defeat in the history of the Roman Republic. His officers begged him to march on Rome itself. The city, they said, was undefended. He hesitated. He waited. He believed Rome's allies would now abandon her and join him. That hesitation is the moment historians have argued over for 2,000 years. Some say he was right to wait. Carthage gave him no siege equipment, no reinforcements. Others say it was the first crack, the first time his genius outpaced his political instinct. Because here is the thing about Hannibal. He understood war. He never quite understood Rome. Rome did not surrender after Cannae. Rome did something stranger. Rome simply refused to lose. It raised new legions. It elected new consuls. It adopted a new strategy, named after a careful general called Fabius. Avoid Hannibal. Never give him another open battle. Bleed him slowly instead. For years, Hannibal roamed Italy unbeaten. He won every engagement Rome dared offer. But unbeaten is not the same as winning, and he was beginning to learn the difference. Pause here for a second, because this is the question that haunts the whole story. If Hannibal had marched on Rome the day after Cannae, would history look different? Was he a strategic genius reading the field correctly, or a man who flinched at the door of destiny? Drop your honest take in the comments. Brilliant patience or the great hesitation that cost him everything? I want to read what you think before the ending lands. His army shrank. His allies in southern Italy wavered. Carthage sent almost no help from home. The Carthaginian Senate distrusted the Barca family more than they hated Rome. His brother Hasdrubal tried to bring reinforcements from Spain across the Alps. A Roman army caught him in northern Italy. Hasdrubal was killed. His severed head was thrown into Hannibal's camp under cover of night. By some accounts, Hannibal looked at it and quietly said Carthage's fate was now sealed. Meanwhile, far away, a young Roman was studying him with terrifying patience. His name was Publius Cornelius Scipio. He had survived Cannae as a teenager. He had watched his father and uncle die fighting Carthaginians in Spain. He did not want revenge. He wanted to learn the man who had broken Rome. Scipio went to Spain and beat the Carthaginians at their own kind of war. Speed, deception, cavalry encirclement. He was reading Hannibal's own playbook. Then he did the one thing Rome had never dared. He proposed invading Africa, hit Carthage at home, force Hannibal to abandon Italy and come defend his city. It worked. After 15 years in Italy, Hannibal was recalled home. He had won so many battles that the Roman Senate could not count them. He had never lost, and yet he was being summoned to save a country he had not seen since boyhood. He landed in North Africa to find a Carthage that barely remembered him. A Carthage of merchants and politicians jealous of the Barca name. His veterans were exhausted, his elephants were poorly trained, his cavalry was outnumbered. For the first time in his life, the terrain was wrong, the timing was wrong, the army was wrong. And waiting for him across the field was Scipio, who had studied him for half a lifetime. They met near a place called Zama in 212 BC. Legend says the two generals spoke face to face before the battle. A young Roman and the man who had haunted Rome's nightmares since before the young Roman could shave. No deal was reached. There was nothing left to bargain. The next morning, the elephants charged. Scipio had prepared lanes in his lines. The beasts thundered through harmlessly into open ground beyond the Romans. Then the Roman cavalry, now superior, drove off Hannibal's horsemen. And while Hannibal's infantry pushed forward with brilliant pressure, the Roman cavalry returned. They came in behind him. The same trap. The same closing jaws. But this time, aimed at him. At Zama, Hannibal was beaten by his own masterpiece, played back in his face. He fled the field alive. Carthage surrendered. The war was over. He was 45 years old, and the oath of a 9-year-old boy lay in ruins. But the story does not end at Zama. It ends slower and sadder. Hannibal did not retreat into bitterness. He went into politics. He reformed Carthage's corrupt finances, exposing officials who had grown rich during the war. The men he embarrassed went straight to Rome and asked Rome to demand his head. Rome was happy to oblige. He fled into exile, hunted across the eastern Mediterranean. He advised foreign kings. He fought a naval battle by hurling pots of snakes onto enemy decks. Even in exile, in his 50s, he was still inventing ways to win. But Rome kept hunting. King after king turned him over or threatened to. Finally, cornered in a small town in what is now Turkey, he was out of friends. By some accounts, he took poison he had carried in a ring for years. His last words, as the tradition tells it, were that he would free Rome from its fear of him. He died around 183 BC, far from Carthage, far from Italy, far from everything he had built. So what really destroyed Hannibal Barca? Not Scipio. Scipio only beat him once, with every advantage history could give. Not the elephants, not the Alps, not even the long years in Italy. He was destroyed by the very gift that made him untouchable. He could see a battlefield with a clarity no one else possessed. But a war is not a battlefield. A war is a city's will to keep getting up. He kept winning the moment, while Rome kept winning the decade. His genius gave him every battle. His blind spot gave Rome the war. And here is why his name has not faded in 2,000 years. Every modern military academy still studies Cannae. Every encirclement strategy still carries his shadow. When generals talk about the perfect battle, they are quietly talking about a Carthaginian. He lost his war and still rewrote the rules of war forever. Rome's greatest fear became Rome's greatest teacher. The republic that destroyed him built its empire on lessons learned from it. That is the strangest legacy in military history. The loser shaped the winner's future. Hannibal Barca did not break Rome, but Rome was never the same again. A boy swore an oath in a temple and changed the shape of the Western world, trying to keep it. If this story hit you the way it hit me, drop a like, so more people get to find it. If you want more rulers and conquerors told this way, subscribe to the channel. There is a long list coming. Tell me in the comments which leader you want next. Caesar, Alexander, Cyrus, Saladin, Genghis. I am reading every reply. And ask yourself something before you click away. If you had been in Hannibal's tent the night after Cannae, would you have marched on Rome? Or would you, like him, have waited for a surrender that was never coming? Next on the channel, we step into the marble shadow of the man who finished what Hannibal started. Scipio Africanus, the boy who studied a monster and became one. Until then, remember this: some men lose the war and still win history.